once again. Welcome back to the Jason Sellers Politics Podcast. As always, I am your host, Jason Sellers, lifelong Minneapolis resident. And this is part three of my five-part park board interview series. This is not another at-large candidate. This is the first of two park board candidates. He's the one challenging incumbent Billy Men's Dan Engelhart. We have a good interview. He brings his labor background, which is very relevant to the park board, considering there was a 22-day strike, as he'll mention a couple of times throughout, last summer with members of LIUNA 363. And he talks about his labor work and his connections that he's built already with state and city governments. Enjoy. Hello.
Hello, how's it going, Jason?
It's going good. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, I typically use the same questions for all the interviews, so these aren't going to be specific to District 1, but you can answer them specifically for District 1 or the whole city, considering that's what the park board is for. But I'll just start with a brief introduction for myself. I'm Jason. I live in District 1. I live in Audubon Park, lifelong Minneapolitan, and let's just give yourself an introduction and your relationship with Minneapolis. Like, did you grow up here? Did you move here?
Yeah. Dan Engelhart, live in the Holland neighborhood, and I've been in Holland since 2012, and I was in Sheridan I moved 2 blocks, and that put me in a different ward and precinct and all that. But been in Northeast since 2007, and I grew up in central Wisconsin, little town called Marshfield. Minneapolis was always sort of our city. It was definitely closer than Milwaukee.
Hmm.
As that can be for people in Wisconsin. So the city that we'd come to, actually went to Bethel for the first 2 years of college, and then UW-Eau Claire. And I was working at Edison High School when the floods happened, and I have
Yeah.
scars on my body from that, in the laborers union doing demolition when the band room the whole water mains flooded everything out in 1997. So Northeast was, my parents moved here in 2007, and my brother and sister were already living in Minneapolis proper. And I decided to move here I was on the East Coast union organizing. Started out as an environmental organizer in New Jersey, came back here for the Wellstone campaign in 2002 as a team leader on the paid canvas. Wellstone encouraged me, among many others, to pursue what has become my career as a union organizer, negotiator. Current title is senior business agent at MAPE, and I've been there for 13 years representing state employees. And when I, was looking to really set my roots down in Minneapolis, the office, I was working for the International with SEIU, and the office was above what is now Falling Knife Brewing. It was a printing shop back then. And I saw 13th Avenue and ate at the Old Modern, loved that place. And I thought, this is where I need to live. This feels like a small town in the city, and the fact that the workers would, it was a working class neighborhood with immigrants, and now newer immigrants coming in and giving it that life and vibrancy that, could walk to the various mills, first saw and then grain mills. But this is it. This is it for me, and I've loved it ever since and feel deeply connected to the community. And our parks are part of our identity here in Minneapolis. We're proud of the diverse and immigrant and refugee community that we have, and our labor legacy, but and our parks are also a significant part of our identity, and we love them. And we have a lot of work to do on the river and elsewhere, and then of course getting our programming up to speed. So yeah.
Yeah, when people ask what I like about Minneapolis, I think I like that the environment where you can be just a drive away from downtown, but still feel like you're in a neighborhood-y place. I know we have a bunch of little different corridors around the city. I know closest to me is Central Avenue, and Chimborazo is just a few blocks west of me, and Holy Land is a few blocks south of that, and
Yeah, let's
just a
go
lot of
get
different
some food
places
at
you can go to.
Chimborazo soon, please.
Yeah. So you kind of started answering this already, but what relevant experience do you have specifically for the park board position?
Yeah, I mean, I did say that earlier. I started out as an environmental organizer,
Hmm.
campus and community organizer, an organization called New Jersey Community Water Watch, and part of PIRG, Public Interest Research Group, and then Wellstone Campaign, and then the labor side. But also, for several years, I was on a group called AVCAC. So the park board has these CACs. most of them are short term. It stands for Community Advisory Committee, and they're short term to, to come up with a new plan for a park or a specific project. But AVCAC was a standing CAC to implement the Above the Falls and River First plan, which effectively, in short, is to get the river accessible and cleaned up on both sides of the river with a, walking and biking path and that. And, now that the upper lock is closed and there's no more barge traffic, to kind of deindustrialize and really implement that plan. So I was on AVCAC. We literally met. I mean, we went to pretty much every park board meeting because there's always something happening river-wise. And so I was already attending meetings when I was on AVCAC, and we literally met, our formal meetings were in the park board building. So I'm very familiar with the park board. It feels like a natural fit that way, in regard to, that experience that I've had. And time commitment wise, I can still keep the same job I have as a business agent at MAPE and do the work. And I feel like I was doing every bit of the time commitment wise when I was on AVCAC, so I'm pretty familiar with that. And then the labor side, it's clear with a 22-day long strike last summer, and we saw a real lack of leadership from literally anyone on the current park board. And I believe in core union values, and I have the relevant experience of negotiating, very big deal contracts when Sanford Health was first coming into Minnesota, and Bemidji, for example. And current, for the last 13 years, I meet with commissioners of state agencies and navigate state government. So I have tons of relationships and the ability to navigate the various governmental partnerships that need to exist for a thriving park board. And I really want to bring that experience to get to repair the harm that was caused during that strike last summer. And, we have to do better. We have to be, when I talk about employer of choice, and I realize that not everybody knows what that means. And what that means is, if you're an arborist or you're a park keeper or you're a crew leader, whatever it is, a horticulturist, you name it, that the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board often wins awards, number one, but clearly we have issues to do to be the number one employer. Like, this is the best place I could possibly work. That's what employer of choice means, and we need to get there. And we're currently obviously not there, because 1 year ago at this time, our workers that keep our parks up were on strike. We had trees down and trash not being picked up, and that's a clear problem that I'm ready and uniquely capable to address.
Yep, I definitely have a question about that later. That's definitely one of the themes I think of this park board election. But so right now I want to talk about public safety as somebody who works in a rec center. Being able to provide a safe space for kids and teens and even adults is something that I value. And there's been a lot of proven results that having a place to go, especially as a teenager and as somebody who needs a community and needs resources, that helps prevent safety issues in the future. So how would you and the board take a preventative approach, particularly in the quantity and quality of youth programming?
Yeah, well, I mean, I want people like you that know what it's like to, to work with their youth and programming. You got to go to the people that are living it every day, like you are, and being in community and relationship with the workers in our Minneapolis parks, and your experience in Minneapolis parks and St. Paul parks, and programming, of course.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, and just really, what is it, something that would draw people and really get them in, our youth, particularly if it's about, you know, the problems that we have in society. Many of them are a loss related to a loss of community, and where are people finding community and belonging in a healthy way or a less than healthy way. And that's what we want as human beings, is connection and community. It's just primal in us, and our parks are the way to really embody that. So what can we do to meet what will draw people in and engage people in 2025? Just because it's a program we had in 1995, maybe that means that's not the thing that people are really doing now. Um, and what kind of community leaders will draw people in too, because leaders are people that have followers and people that will join, and if they can promote it and be active and engaged and perhaps leading the program, um, there's a lot of opportunity within our parks and our park buildings to have those be community spaces where people come together and talk about healthy foods or healthy choices and building a a loving and supporting, welcoming, belonging. So public safety is often thought about as law enforcement, but it's a we keep us safe mentality of when we're active and engaged and spending that time in our parks, and if somebody's experiencing a problematic thing that's perhaps making them behave in a problematic way, then community can try to approach in a loving way and say, "Hey, you seem to be having a tough time. What's going on in your life?" And maybe we can help them out. And then moving on to that, to the core union value of quality work, under Councilmember Elliott Payne is now saying it probably better than I can, but I've certainly worked with him on that. Council President Elliott Payne, that we've been told a lie about the power of collective bargaining and the police, quote unquote union, that they can't be held accountable for things like excessive force and explicit bias. And that is a lie under PELRA and under just cause. If when the rule is reasonable, which the rule needs to be, define what explicit force or explicit bias and excessive force is, you will be held accountable. You can't do that, so that we have our officers doing what we need them to do and what we don't, what we can't have them doing. Beyond that, I think, what we've seen, sadly, there was a murder in Boom Island Park and a young boy in Falwell Park recently. And that's tragic, and we're living in a time with, so many guns out in society, and an armed situation sadly does seem to require an armed response, but we need them for that, but we can't have them exhibiting explicit bias and excessive force. And I think there's a common denominator for both of those tragic murders, and they are cars. And so how people need to get to the park, but how can we get them to be less car centric and less able to have drive-by shootings happening, and nobody really wants to hear a car running or the music for the car when they go to the park. So like, can we get people to the park however they need to get there? And if that is a car, fine, but how can we make it less like just these are for driving cars in? So that I think that's part of it as well in terms of the proactive side of it. Yeah.
Also regarding public safety, this is something I kind of thought of when I was working at the Minneapolis Park Board and still at this in my position at St. Paul is I don't always feel prepared to help when there's somebody if there were a situation where somebody needed help and can the park board and would you support park board sponsored just trainings for community members to help other community members. Ideas that I was thinking of when I was working at the park was, having a pop-up Narcan training like once a week or for a couple days in the summer, first aid trainings, educational literature just to have at the booth, incentives, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I support every bit of that, and I think we could also. I really appreciate the question, because yes, I mean the answer is yes, and beyond that, I think like de-escalation training um, is helpful in being culturally and all the ways of responsive to meeting people's needs of what's going on in our reality here in the year 2025, which is a whole lot. So yeah, how can we keep everybody safe and healthy and help them through whatever tough time they might be having, because there's an endless amount of tough things to be struggling with in 2025.
And I know there's some barriers there. I know one of the candidates I spoke to previously talked about how it might be tough because Park Board isn't a healthcare provider. And I know in my current position they won't give us Narcan training. We have first aid training, CPR training, de-escalation training, but they don't want to be liable in case there's a combative response to Narcan. Um, there's also been a lot of coverage of unhoused people in the parks, whether it's a whole encampment or just somebody looking for a place to rest. What approach would you take to help these community members while balancing safety and comfort to families, which is a valid concern for people with kids or
Yeah,
just trying to feel safe?
yeah. Obviously, that's a huge reality. Uh, we saw massive encampments in so many parks, kind of early on in the pandemic, and certainly it grew post, during the uprising with the realities we had here with unaccountable law enforcement doing what they, murdering George Floyd and everything that resulted from there in the uprising. Uh, there is a reality that we don't have solutions that meet people's needs that are unhoused. And in that reality, we're seeing a violent and vicious, just kick them out, take all their things, and they're even in a worse place than they were before. Uh, Encampments are certainly not the answer, but they can be a temporary answer for people that are in the situation where their needs aren't able to be met by any of our services that exist. Should they be in parks? I think there's a pretty strong no to that from community and the park board at this point. But can we find a parcel that, people can live in a way that works for them until we can figure out how to get their needs met? And just the current, no matter what's happening, if an encampment pops up, we can't sweep it the way that's being done. We have to make sure people can move along with their lives and dignity and their things they might need, whether it's medications or, um, you know, uh, their ID, their social security card. Those things just get thrown in a dumpster, and it just harms them even further. So that's generally my take on our current reality with our neighbors.
What steps will you take on the park board for climate efficiency and to do our part, no matter how big or small, to fight climate crisis and get cleaner air, cleaner water, especially seems relevant the last couple of days with the smoke that was in the air.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the smoke, I actually represent the Minnesota DNR. So at MAPE, I have DNR, education, and DLI as my main agencies that I cover. So DLI is labor and industry. Pretty good fit for me. I was a licensed teacher at one point. So education, DNR. I like the DNR. I like to spend time in the park, those parks, state parks, and also, do the things that the DNR serves. But I do represent the foresters and the fire team leads that fight our fires. And it's, I could go on about that and the frustrations about how we got to do better for the people that do that work too here in Minnesota. But and they go to Western states and they go to Canada. But yeah, I mean, uh, climate change is a systems and structure problem. We can't do individual choices our way out of it. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do those individual choices things that are such as, like, zero waste and compostable and this and that. But what we have the technology now for, heat pumps. I've retrofitted my own home that I'm in right now that, they all just slap 1900 on there. Who knows how old this place really is, but it had no insulation. So we didn't, got the energy audit, did insulation, and heat pumps. And that was all, I was able to access, the city program that has 0% financing for that. So incentives, that's not park board, of course, but what can we leverage? We have, whether it's solar or heat pumps, electric cars, electric mowers, and, you name it, that we have that tech. So really investing in the systems and structure change. The fact that our wastewater or storm drain, often does drain directly to that. How can we intergovernmental partner with Met Council that really works on that infrastructure? And, MWMO is doing great work, but a lot of that really doesn't feel is structural and systemic as it could be. It's unfortunate, but like when my dog, who's almost 13 years old, was pretty young, I didn't realize that when you swim on your back and you're not paying attention, she'll get on you and push down on you. And I was taking a breath swimming in Cedar Lake, and I got E. coli, because the water was warmer. It was early in the season, but the warming lakes, we have obviously milfoil and other invasives that are coming as a result of climate change. And then we see, that leads into like homeowners being or property having to get rid of trees like emerald ash borer, and the economic impact on those that, are on fixed income or just have not, they're living check to check. needs to be handled more equitably. So, I mean, there's so much, but systems and structure change, looking at like how can we really um, get to the point and non-point source pollution that the park board itself might be causing with the equipment we use and the infrastructure we have. And then of course, bolstering the kind of the more individual choice thing, making it easy for people. The compostable thing is there, community gardens, localizing everything as much as possible. So we got to stop burning those dead dinosaurs.
Yeah, we had a big elm tree in front of our house, and I think just to prevent the Dutch elm disease, I think it was pretty expensive every few years. I'm not sure. I'm not the homeowner, so it wasn't up to me to get that done. But um, what can the park board do to support pedestrian and transit safety on parkways and other NPRB owned properties? And would you support either part-time or full-time closures to vehicles for those parkways?
Um, yeah, I mean, I do support really robust where, what can we do about parkway, closures, having gates up and that sort of thing that we can close and message in advance. I think that was very popular during the beginning of the pandemic
Hmm.
and it can really expand the space that we have and have people be outside and active and in community with each other. So I do support, a robust look at that and how we can make that work with our current traffic patterns and realities and communicate in advance of the closures and have good routes for people to move around and get where they're going. Otherwise, I mean, having, like good, whether it's less than safe crossings, having good signage and lights and, um, everything we can do to slow down vehicle traffic because the danger to pedestrians is cars and trucks, so having that holistic approach to transportation, but yet lighting, signage, moving to the pedestrian culture that needs to exist in any major city, is the way forward there. Um, yeah, um, yeah,
Yeah, I've mentioned this in my last two interviews, but my grandpa just until very recently had a wood shop on the other side of university, and we need to take Sandy Parkway to get there, and it's a very hilly area. And as somebody who isn't as experienced of a biker as I'd like to be, it's really hard for me to bike there. My grandpa, who is a more experienced biker, can do it, and I saw that on your Wedge Live interview, even John Edwards was having trouble with that area, um, right out Sandy Parkway, and there's also the St. Anthony Dog Park where we bring our dog, and there's a lot of cars that just go right past the stop for pedestrian sign, and always cautious there. And you brought up trucks, which is something I hadn't thought of in my last couple of podcasts, but right off Central and St. Anthony Parkway, there's a clearance sign, and there's every so often a truck will ignore it and just have the top of it scrape right
yeah,
off.
yeah, yeah. I know. Yeah, seems like it's on a schedule, like every quarter or something. A truck does that. Yeah. Or a driver does that with a truck, right?
Hmm.
And it's a bad day for everybody.
Yeah. Last year, park employees represented by the Ionis 363 went on strike. What priorities do you have for park employees, and how will you achieve them?
Yeah. I mean, that is what really motivated me to run.
Yep.
Um, I mean, it was the 4th of July when the strike began, and I was, oftentimes you see, oh, strike might happen, and then the threat of the strike, is enough to get the the deal done. And obviously that didn't happen. So I'm like, well, I guess I got to go down there. I was having a bit of a tough day myself on the 4th of July and, jumped in, helped lead chants and showed them how to have fun on a strike because that's I've been on plenty as a union staff professional. And what I saw was just a tremendous lack of leadership from literally anyone on the park board. I've had conversations with Becky Alper, who did introduce the amendment, which was effectively just directing, the management's negotiation team to withdraw their unfair labor practice proposals because they introduced concessionary language once the strike began. So takebacks on like the number of stewards, which is literally the definition of an unfair labor practice charge. And, I reached out to the incumbent Billy Menz, and said, what are you doing? And he said, I'm trying to figure it out. And I said, well, I can help you. And he didn't seem interested in talking with me. I connected him with the mediator, and then, we had park board commissioners saying they didn't know enough about the strike, or Billy was saying you should take these concessionary proposals because it's time to modernize the contract. And this language is, decades old, which that's what management says when they want the workers to eat something that they shouldn't, they don't have to. And that in the midst of a strike, that's just not acceptable. It's not okay. It's not how we can be the employer of choice. So what steps would I take? I would bring my literal experience and success. I'm respected by statewide commissioners of state agencies, and I meet with them and with MAPE in that context. I bargained, a very tough fight when Sanford Health came into Bemidji, and had the respect of one of the most prominent employer side attorneys by the end of that bargain. So I bring that experience, and also there needs to be a labor committee, and we need to flip the script. The commissioners were being told up to and during the strike that it's not their business to get involved. And no, I will say it is our business to get involved and to be paying attention. Does that mean, is there a commissioner at the table? Maybe. I don't know but we at least need a labor committee. We have Lion 363 that was on strike. We have AFSCME. We have other unions. We need to have, uh, the best possible relationship to be the employer of choice with, represented by union and not staff. And, so I think there needs to be a labor committee, and, a whole lot of education and a whole lot of changing of the paradigm of, how bargaining works and how labor relations work. And a core union value is quality work. So yes, we have to operate in the realities of funding and accountability. And like I spoke to that accountability for law enforcement, but that exists for everyone too. Whether it's work performance, or, gross misconduct will be held accountable. And obviously explicit bias can be exhibited by anyone that works there. And when the workforce is one of welcoming and belonging, it emanates out everywhere. So yeah, there's a lot of steps. That's my biggest priority and motivation for running. And the workers
Yeah.
are all supporting me, so
Mhm.
they know who showed up and how and what they need.
Yeah, I know 4th of July last year was an interesting day to begin the strike. On top of it being 4th of July and a big day for the parks, because as someone who sat in the park on 4th of July, I know that it was pouring rain. Uh, and I had to sit at the Commons downtown all day until my
Yeah.
shift was up, because there wasn't enough lightning to cancel the shift. But part of the reason I do the podcast and I try to be active on social media is that a lot of people, especially my age, don't know what the park board does or even what the city council does. How will your campaign go about community outreach and input, and then how will you continue that when you're in the office?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I mean, and also the park board is underlooked, and even city council to some extent. And there's so much power and so much money that is there at the local levels. And I don't think you can get more hyper local than your neighborhood park, or programming that you're, engaged in. So already, I mean, there are people that, loved my speeches at the ward conventions and are just fired up by who I am and what I've done throughout my life. And it's really not about me. It's about us and everybody feeling like this is really about community and my voice matters. And I do think I just bring that energy. I mean, running a real scrappy campaign at this point because I got in kind of late, and that sort of thing, but already generating a lot of energy and excitement. We're gonna do canvassing and community events in parks, and we're in good shape to win the DFL endorsement on Saturday and win in November. But yeah, then it's not just like, oh, I disappear and I'm some guy that's, at park board meetings on Wednesday. I want to have standing weekly meetings, coffee shops, parks. Ideally, they're in parks. We need to activate these buildings as these are our community third space, and some we already talked about for some people their first space, but being responsive, listening, being a clear communicator, when there's CACs or other intentional forms of community engagement, making sure those voices are truly listened to and respected and heard. Um, Getting people to understand that how they have power, and I can only do so much as one commissioner, but if we can build a movement around a specific piece of programming, or, safety type, educational things like we talked about earlier. Um, that's how we really get things done, is it's about me, because yes, I'm on the ballot, but it's about all of us coming together and feeling like these are ours. We're all public park owners, if you will, in this current reality. So
That's something I resonated with when you said, you're not going to disappear after the election. That's something I brought up. I was at a meet and greet with Senator Omar Fateh, who's running for mayor, and I said, how we create a city hall that's open to the community and take community input, because politicians too often get elected and then don't show up on the streets until it's time to get reelected.
yeah.
Um, and then how will you advocate for those park board needs, for those community needs in partnerships with other government bodies such as the city council, state legislature, Met Council, county?
Yeah, I mean, to answer that question directly, you gotta build relationships. I'm honored. Went public just today, which is whatever, July 14th, we're doing this interview. Um, Council President Elliot Payne has endorsed, and there's other endorsements that are about to become public. So that's because have been in deep relationship with, those folks that are on city government and state government. And, that's part of my job with MAPE, is to, with state employees that I represent, to navigate the intergovernmental realities. We have, a mess at the federal level, to say the least. There's some other words that could be used. And, state government is in a interesting and challenging place as well. And then, we got county, we got Met Council, we got city, we got park board. So it's about relationships and listening, and then, I think at the end of the day, it's also about making sure community leaders are involved, and we're bringing, kind of movement, um, you know, organizing people power around to get the political will, to make these things happen. So yeah, I got a lot of relationships that are, I think, solid, respectful relationships, across the board. So just work those relationships. So talking about transit actually before, with the exact details, but I mean, I was reached out to by a county commissioner's staff person to help out from the labor voice, with actually the mayor and some council members that weren't quite there with Robbinsdale and the Blue Line extension. And I said, sure, I can make some calls. And I ended up talking to the mayor and a couple of Robbinsdale council members, and they heard me, they listened to me, and they changed their minds. And now that piece is not blocking the Blue Line extension. Unfortunately, the park board is blocking parts of the Blue Line, and we gotta make transit happen now. Climate emergency is real, and anything that's holding it back is bad at this point for, public transit that's sustainable. So yeah.
All right, so just to finish off, why should people vote for you? Your little elevator pitch, your goals, and why you're the best candidate to achieve them.
Yeah, I think my life experience as an organizer and a union professional, and my deep relationships with community and various elected officials really speaks soundly for my experience and ability. Um, I'm uniquely positioned to right the wrongs of our realities of the 22-day long strike last summer, and the relationship we have with the workers. I'm in a close relationship with the state's authorized rep for full service community schools, so implementing that model. Our River First Above the Falls plan, I'm uniquely positioned for that. I will listen. I will be in deep relationship with everyone on the east side of the river that's in District 1. Run a strong campaign. People are excited about it. Uh, I just think I'm, uniquely positioned in this moment. And in this moment, we need strong leaders at every level of government that are going to stand on values. And, no one's free until we all are. And that's what grounds me. And another core union value is the greatest good for the greatest number. And if something's actively harming someone, we can't do that. We got to figure out a way around that. So I'll lead with love and strong leadership, and I'm a fighter for that, and I will fight for all of us, and no one's free until we all are, and that's what grounds me. And what were you doing when? And boy, do we have moment after moment after moment of win. It's happening now. We have people being deported, and we need to, to possibly death camps, and we just need to really stand up. And I'm ready to do that. I know it's not much pay, a lot of time, and a challenging job, but I really thought about it when I decided to get in, and I said, we need someone that can meet the moment. And I love the east side of the river, northeast and southeast, and I'm hearing from our neighbors in Southeast Como that they don't have what the promise of the Minneapolis parks like the rest of us. They have one park effectively in, not that neighborhood park and close and access to bike paths and transit. And we can't leave anyone behind, any neighborhood behind. And I'm ready to fight for all of us and navigate the humongous challenges that are in front of us with this current political reality, long emergency. It's not a moment, it's a long emergency. So yeah, no, vote for me. I'm ready to fight with you.
All right.
I need you all too. I need everybody. We need everybody. Everybody counts, everybody matters.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks so much for your time and for coming on. And I guess I will see you at the convention.
Yeah, sounds good, Jason. Appreciate you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to my podcast with Dan Engelhart. This is part 3 of 5, so go check out the 2 previous ones with Michael Wilson and Tom Olson, and then my next 2 with at-large candidate Adam Schneider, and then the District 1 incumbent Billy Benz. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Jason Sellers MN. You can probably hear my dog Baker barking right now. You can follow me on Instagram at MPLSJason and on Blue Sky at JasonSEL .bsky.app. If you're watching on YouTube, this is also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you are listening, this is available on YouTube with video at Jason Sellers Politics. Thanks so much. Bye.